is another extraction from our live stream a few days ago where Haley, aka Jason Boyles, gives us a quick 10-minute recap on his interest in exposing DEA McDonut and how this kind of behaviour impacts us as a community. You may note some of the boots on the ground people are actually in the chat, and I've put some of their messages up on the screen so that you can see it is impacting the community. I'm talking about the actual people there in that community who have the power to speak truth to power, not just those of us looking on and supporting from a distance.
What I don't want people to do is we have these Sean and the Gulf fans, so they're really mad at me today, right? They're very mad at me today because what they see is these quick articles here that we're going to discuss. They see me coming at Sean, and these are all newspaper articles from Western Massachusetts when Sean was based in the DEA in Springfield that I wrote about earlier today.
Mm-hmm.
And they're pretty scandalous. If you go through those and you see Sean's first big case in the DEA is that case that you see up there right now where it says the thread that's up on top where it says case erased at DEA. That was Sean's pretty much his first case. And there's allegations that he tampered with evidence. He didn't allow a suspect to have an attorney continued interrogating them after they asked for an attorney. It was about 30 hours before he and his boss, who was eventually arrested for cocaine distribution, allowed the guy to have an attorney. It's in a crazy story. In this article here, that thread, the boss, Sean was in charge of the evidence, which in this case was audio tapes of phone recordings, phone taps, and actual wires that are and
Yep.
And there's 86 seconds that are missing in one of the tapes that were recorded over. And there was allegations by the defense attorney that we have these. Yes, Turtle Boy Live, you have sinned. So there's allegations from these defense attorneys in there that are saying in this thing that, hey, they entrapped my client and the entrapment happened in that period of time. So they went back and they erased the tape. When the FBI, they had the FBI review the tape, and the FBI heard they couldn't determine exactly who did it and who was handling the recorder, but they heard Sean McDonough's voice right before the portion of time that the tape was erased. So they had a tape that was recorded, they put it back in a tape recorder, and they hit record to cover up a certain section of that tape. Yeah. And they had and Sean had come up with this fanciful affidavit that, oh, well, they were doing the tape in a car and they got too far. The follow car got too far away from the lead car, so it lost the signal from the wire. And that was the period of time that the tape was missing. And when they submitted the tape to the FBI for analysis, after the defense attorneys raised a big stink about it, they said that was ridiculously untrue. I mean, it was shot out of the water. And so this was Sean's first case in the DEA. So we went through this, and it's unbelievable. And it doesn't get better with the other posts that I had throughout the day. So we have, some of these similar allegations. There's as we scroll down into the past that thread, there's another one there where I'm sorry, I'm working off memory. Can we just scroll down my feed a little bit there?
Scroll down a little.
Yeah, in my feed to the next story. Yeah.
This one. This is
no. So that's in the thread, isn't it? Are we in the thread there?
We're now in the thread. Yes.
Yeah. Can you go back out to go to the left of up to the left of post there so we can. If you scroll down. Prior to that one today, I want to go back to that in a minute too. But prior to that one today, if you scroll down,
this one's 6 hours ago.
Keep going. It's going to be it's similar to what the thread looked like, where you'll see a graphic here. Keep going. That's the same case. That's the same case as we go down. See, that's still the thread, but that's all right. Keep going.
I don't know why. That's why I said you should put it up on your screen, because it'll come up in order for you.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I've never shared my screen, but if you want to try that, I can do it.
I freaking hate X for this. Yeah, so down the bottom you'll see you can actually press H on your keyboard. That'll bring up share your screen.
I got it here. So here's a case where this case is actually crazier than this screenshot here, but here's a case where um, there was a confidential informant who's listed as Scott in this conversation that you see here, and he was talking to his basically his aunt-in-law. It's his wife or girlfriend's aunt, and talking to her, and she was telling him that her husband was receiving pressure to become a government witness, and that Sean said if he didn't come in, he'd put information on the street to get him killed. This woman didn't know she was being recorded. Her husband is a criminal, and she's talking to one of the criminals that her husband works with.
Didn't something like that happen with when Aiden got put in jail? Someone was trying to make out that he was like some sort of confidential informant. I think.
Oh yes, I mean we could do a whole thing. We could do a whole thing on this because this is gonna
put him in jail, to put him in danger while he was in jail, wasn't it?
I'm gonna do some coverage on Grant in the Moore Stringer case coming up when I launch my YouTube channel. But it is a big deal because that is exactly what they did, and I can tell you that Kate Peter, Kevin Lenahan, and Grant were all complicit in trying to say that Aiden was an informant for neo-Nazi skinhead groups or white supremacists. He was a federal informant against groups like that because they did it specifically because the prison that he was in has a problem with skinheads, basically, and they were trying to put him in danger. It's not the first time that I can tell a story like that involving Grant Smith Ellis.
Yeah.
But that is something that it's actually one of the first things I told Aiden when he got out of prison was that, hey, you have to know this is what they were doing while you were there. So they did this thing. They intentionally tried to get him attacked while he was in prison. Now, I think he'll tell you that he ended up by being okay because they kept him segregated from the rest of the prisoners, which was probably smart based on how high profile of a prisoner he was. But that is something where that was an attempt. So, but that's not Sean on the Gulf, and that's not this. So in this case, you have this. These are the same. This story here is actually they're the same family. It's the same Jeffrey Scott and his uncle Buzzy are basically the ones here. While they were Sean's confidential informants, basically they came to Sean and said, "Hey, they're still trafficking in cocaine, even though they have an agreement and they're working for the feds." And Sean did not report it because he didn't feel the information was required because it was based on the uncorroborated claim of an informant. What they don't tell you is that informant was also Sean's informant, and the U.S. Attorney's Office was using him as a witness at the same time Sean was saying he didn't need to report, that he didn't need to follow up on the claim that he reported somebody was. So on one hand, they want to use him as a witness and rely on his credibility. And on the other hand, Sean said, I'm going to look the other way when he says that his uncle is still trafficking in cocaine because it's an uncorroborated word of an informant. So talk about questioning the reliability of your own informant. And here we go. The same informant was arrested a day after he signed an agreement. So he just had signed an agreement not to be involved with drugs as part of his job as an informant, a confidential informant for the DEA. And the Springfield police found 2 vials of crack on him. So what happened is he was with Sean McDonough. Sean McDonough dropped him off at a location. Sean said he searched him for drugs and he didn't have any drugs on him. Nobody was home at the location. As the guy walked back out onto the street, the police surrounded him. They searched him. He didn't have drugs. A second police officer searched him, and suddenly they found 2 vials of crack cocaine. So that, and not only that, but Sean did not report that arrest to the DEA either. Although it's likely that Sean had a hand in having those Springfield police officers plant those drugs on him to so that he could have the informant by the balls a little bit harder. So these are things.
These are all jaw dropping. This is
and I did give a disclaimer in one of these things. This is actually a little bit more detailed. The same story. So, but I did give a disclaimer on these things that times were a little bit different back then. And you know what we didn't have? We didn't have cell phone cameras, and we didn't have, it's so funny because contemporaneously I was in these places at these times that this stuff was occurring. Like this was my stomping grounds where this was happening. Now, obviously I didn't know anything about it, but I was of age in my late teens or early 20s in these areas while this stuff was occurring, while Sean was the DEA agent, the local DEA agent. So I always find that interesting. But so these are valid things, and here I can tell you that I have a soft spot for Sean on the Gulf. Everybody knows it, and people reading these today don't think that I do, but I think I told you, Aussie, right before we came on here. As I'm writing this story, this is probably some things happened today that we're going to get into in my story, but it's a hard story for me to write because this is the guy that at the very beginning of all this picked me as one of the 5 people to share taillight evidence with. This is the guy that was cordial with me throughout, that I had several conversations with. We went back and forth. I asked him to help me find verification of a federal arrest in a child sex trafficking case because we knew that they had taken someone in custody and it was involved in that other Moore Springer story that I'm writing about.
Yeah.
And I asked him to help me verify. The arrest. Eventually, we were able to get verification of the arrest. And it didn't exactly come from him, but I do know that he took some steps to try and help me find that information. So this is somebody that I was very fond of, right up until the time that he decided to start attacking me while he was attacking everybody else. And that brings us back to, you can take the screen back if you'd like.
Back.
That brings us back.
I get what you're saying. Driving the screen.
Yeah, back. You can drive again. That's all I wanted to cover on my actual, things that are up now. But that brings me, or you can leave it up this way, I don't care. But that brings me back to my the third thing, which happened this Sunday. So we've got Sunday rolls around and Sean does this epic stream. Now, did you know on Saturday Sean was supposed to do this stream, kept saying he was going to do a Zoom and he's going to do the stream or whatever else, and some of his mods called him off because they were telling him that he had the wrong information, and that's why that stream didn't happen until Sunday. And so what ended up by happening is he goes on this stream, he flames everybody, and of course what he does is he posts this thing online where we have the video with Frankie Keegan. I'm sorry, that wasn't on Sunday.
God, that was shocking. Can I just interrupt for 1 second?
Yeah, please do.
Oops, I hit the wrong button. Amber K, if you're in here causing fights, we actually have the friendliest chat on YouTube. So if you're in here and everyone's fighting with you and you're creating fights, then I'm going to keep putting you in timeout. Okay? It's not because you got a different opinion. It's because you're fighting with everyone. There's a difference between fighting with everyone and having your own opinion. Sorry, Jason.
I'm immune to all that, right? Because I'm really not watching over there, so I apologize.
Okay.
But
I'll just interrupt you every so often to bring it back under control.
It's fine. So I'm sorry. This was prior to Saturday's live stream. It could have happened Friday. It could have happened whatever else. Sean posted this video of Frankie Keegan, Lindsay Gaetani's ex, who we always hear is a horrible guy. And Aidan Carney did an amazing job of taking him down and taking down that entire ridiculous rant and post that Sean did regarding Frankie Keegan and all of the attempted setup. This is a guy who I interviewed all the way back in May for an article that I wrote in June on Lindsay Gaetani, and I have all the screenshots. I have all of our text messages and all of our communications. I literally have a text message where I sent Frankie Keegan the article so he could read it. And he came back and told me that I was doing a great job reporting on the injustices in the criminal justice system, and he supported my work fully. And now we get to this video where Frankie Keegan says, this reporter who I didn't even know was a guy. I talked to Frankie Keegan on the telephone. I don't sound like a girl. Like, I had a phone conversation with him, and I have the message that I sent to Frankie Keegan that said, "Oh, just so you know, don't be alarmed. I don't sound like a Haley, quote unquote," where I had a whole conversation with him about Haley Walbrecht being my pen name. And so the guy comes out in a video and tries to make it look like I tricked him because he's going to say whatever Lindsay tells him to say without knowing that this moron is out there saying things that I have direct evidence that he's telling a lie.
Yeah.
So we get through that whole thing, and at the end, he hits me. He goes back at it. He tries to hit Aiden Carney, More Lies, talks about a bribe. I love this one where he says, I helped you with your case and you didn't help me with my case. And then he simultaneously says, I reached out to your lawyer and your lawyer didn't call me. Well, how did you help them with the case, Frankie? They never used anything from you in their case, and nor would they, because you're a drug dealer who literally provided the drugs that your own daughter overdosed on and died. Like, that's Frankie Keegan. That's Lindsay's ex, right? So, and you know what? From time to time, if I'm interviewing people, I talk to some bad people. Like Sean said, he talks to some bad people. He actually said he liked Frankie. And I found Frankie to be okay and personable. And one of the things that I liked about Frankie when I talked to him is he never tried to, he never tried to say he wasn't who he was. He never tried to appear to be better than he was. He never tried to get around anything that he said. So we have this entire thing. And we have this entire situation where I did at least respect the fact that he told me the truth about the things that he had done wrong. So it gave him a little bit of credibility in my book, which is obviously now gone since he's made this video for Lindsay. So we're in this situation where we have this hostage video where he's there and he's forced to say these things. And I love that I sent it to Abby and that she was able to isolate the fact that Lindsay was coaching him during that one portion of the video. And he was able to add in the piece that he said at the end there. But you have all of these things. It's kind of ridiculous. They're just not good at this. Like, the things were easily provable that they were false. So we had this whole thing where it wasn't even close. And now, so you make yourself look dumb again. You put the stuff out there. All they're trying to do is get their points in to say, oh, this is bribery, because these people, they don't have their connection anymore, right? When this thing went down with Tully and Tully releasing Lindsay's phone extraction, even if Tully was still willing to work with them,
the Better letters completely flipped the script on them, like, hardcore.
Yeah, but this is even before that. Once those extractions were released, Lindsay Gaetani and Kate freaked out. Lindsay screamed at Tully, just like you hear her screaming in that video when she has Frankie, when she gets in his car and she won't get out and she's yelling at him about child support. Tully was dead to them. And as much as they may want to try and get him back or whatever else, that bridge is burned for them. So you have this situation now where we're hearing, oh, these are the Tully files and this and that. No, they're not. That's all over.
Yeah.
So in any case, what happens there is you end up in this situation where now they're just making things up. They're running on their own, just like we saw them do for all of those months after that phone extraction, even before and during the Better letters. They keep telling everybody, you're witness intimidating. Even Kate Peter now is, I'm a witness and you're intimidating me. And Lindsay says, because they got so used to having this power of the state over people.
No, they're such victim. They're like perpetual freaking victims.
I mean, Lindsay has used the power of the state to control men for years and years. We have these situations where, I'm going to get a restraining order. I'm going to allow you to come back, but I'm going to be in control because I have this restraining order. You have all of these things. And that's what they started.
Frankie hostage video.
Yes. And that's what they now, that's kind of their new MO. So they're going to, we're going to release this and we're going to mention that it's bribery. Bribery? Well, who received a benefit in the bribe?
Someone mentioned before about the Darvo thing, and just to reply to that, it was ages ago, and I didn't want to interrupt you, but with the Darvo thing, it's not that they're using the Darvo thing; it's that's the typical behavior of an abuser. The ones who are claiming that they're victims, they're the ones using Darvo. And they're not doing it because they know what Darvo is. They're doing it because they are typical abusers. So just to clear that up. But go on, sorry.
No, it's okay. So we have this whole scenario where they are where they're doing this crazy stuff here, and they're basically saying, the state, we're going to come get you. The state, we're going to come get you. And you're going to do all this. And at the end of the day, they don't have the juice anymore. They've been exposed, and it's getting worse and worse. So while we still have this component, right, we know the state police are still not fans of Aidan Carney. I'm fairly sure they're not fans of mine. When I went and spoke at the district attorney's office last Wednesday for the standout there, I actually stopped and introduced myself to the state police officers who were in the parking lot before I went over there. And part of why I did it was I was thinking, if they're going to arrest me, I just wish they would get it over with now. I Not only did I stop and introduce myself to the state police officers, I walked over to the mic and I savaged their boss. And then when I left, I went back and I said goodbye to the state police officers before I left, because I just don't buy it. I don't think they have any power anymore. Not that I don't think the police are crooked and corrupt and all of these things are happening. I think that they've lost their ability to drive that ship. Now,
Mm.
I don't know that the same is true with, I think Jen McCabe may still have some hooks into the DA's office and some things along those lines, but we're far enough
They
into this.
still have their bat phone line to the DA.
We're far enough into this now that everybody on that side knows they operate with impunity. Don't get me wrong, but I do think that they know the world is watching now. So they are definitely trying to be a little bit more careful. They're trying to do things in their, in the secrecy of their courtrooms and what they can, if they can abuse the legal process, they're doing it there. They're not as brazen on the street at the moment, from what I can tell. But that's just my opinion, and I'm sure that there are people that may have a different opinion on that.
I certainly think that the subpoenas for, the Rule 17 motions for Morrissey's communications might have pulled a few mats out from a couple of them.
The way that I think about that, though, is that you have these people who are willing to go to such great lengths to I mean, what they've done is insane. I mean, just what they've done in the Carney case. Forget the Karen Reed case. We already know that that's insane, right? We have this thing in this one squad of state police, but the sitting DA came out and gave a prejudicial statement on TV, and literally put himself in a position that was horrific for a sitting DA to be in. And you have all of these little things that followed along. The same, Aidan Carney started talking about the state police, specifically that state police squad, in April of 2023. And he's out there having this conversation about the state police and saying that they're corrupt. The same squad of state police investigated him for witness intimidation far before any of these things happened, where he was going to soccer games and he was going to whatever rolling rallies and standing outside the courthouse and the Canton Nine. He was credibly accusing them of corruption in the Karen Reed trial. And the very same police officers he was accusing of corruption investigated him and arrested him. Like, there is nowhere on earth that would be okay in terms of not being a conflict of interest. But these same police officers did that. And, I have a theory on it, and I think I talked about it maybe last time a little, which is we still have the remnants of Whitey Bulger. We talking about Whitey Bulger going back to with Sean McDonough. One of those guys was linked in. There's a whole article, which I didn't publish, which is great because they're basically saying that, Sean and the DEA kind of squandered their opportunity because they had a person that was connected to Whitey Bulger, and they sold that up big when they were trying to make him a confidential informant. And in the end, they bungled things and they got absolutely nothing at all out of this relationship. And in some of these cases, they paid like $250,000 to this informant. Like, it's absolutely crazy. And at the end of the day, it was like the informant ran them instead of with all of these kind of delusions of grandeur that they're going to get Whitey Bulger. And then when they weren't going to get Whitey Bulger, they tried to shift into the Italian mob in Springfield, and they were going to take down the Italian mob. And they ended up by getting nobody, and spending a shit ton of money on this informant. So
except you have Whitey, and then he got stabbed in jail or something, didn't he? Didn't he get shanked?
He did. And there was but that had nothing to do with, but that wasn't as a result of the work of the DEA and their.
No, that was his own doing.
Right.
A lot of the people.
Right. He wasn't part of that investigation. That wasn't anything else. So this was a whole separate scenario. And And the at the time that this was occurring, the sitting district attorney in Hampden County in Springfield, Mass, was playing racquetball with the local capo of the mob every single day. They'd play racquetball at the gym every day, and it was a well-known thing. So you go back and there's plenty of newspaper articles about it. So uh, they weren't making much headway in what they were trying to do, especially on the federal level, because the hard to get past powerful DAs, kind of like DA Morrissey out there. So the feds are out there, they're doing what they can do, they're coming in, they're giving information, but you see the local power that's entrenched. And part of what I was trying to get to, my point here, is a lot of that stems back from the Whitey Bulger days and the Winter Hill Gang, and the state police were literally just wholesale giving out informant lists in to the mob for money. And everybody was owned. They owned the feds, they owned the Mass State Police, and this culture of corruption is something that goes. I just see that KK about MK Ultra and Whitey Bulger. That's absolutely true. But you have this culture of corruption that is pervasive, and it lasts forever because those people hand the job down to the next guy. The government, in a sense, is operating kind of as organized crime. When you have an entrenched district attorney, like the district attorney in Norfolk County, Michael Morrissey, he has this inherently large amount of power, and what we see in this case is a result of that power being abused, but it is part of the systemic issue that we have that's lasted ever since the organized crime days in Massachusetts. The Massachusetts State Police is probably the most corrupt law enforcement organization that I've seen in the entire country.
Yep. Absolutely.
I don't want to get too far afield because I know the topic of our conversation is Sean on the Gulf and the Sean McDonough files. So if you want, I guess I'll roll into a little bit about that conspiracy and the players involved in it. So we have a lot of people. Some people who are on Facebook may remember Amy DeAngelis was a Facebook moderator and admin for the Free Karen Reed Turtle Boy official Facebook page. At one point, if Aiden was still in here, he'd probably be popping up comments as fast as possible to say that he didn't trust her. And I do know that there was some back and forth, and ultimately she was allowed to stay in the Facebook page. There wasn't, I think there wasn't a lot of proof, but there was a pretty good feeling that she was on the down low, not doing the right things. What a lot of people don't know is when I got exposed, when I became not Haley Walbrecht, instead of Haley was sold out, that was as a result of a misunderstanding that I had with somebody who is still a very good friend of mine, who ended up by sending a screenshot to somebody who ended up by sending a screenshot to Amy DeAngelis, and Amy DeAngelis is the one who exposed me. And I have, now that all of this is coming out, that Amy DeAngelis is shopping around the Facebook admin chat logs, I have a message, which I'm not going to share in this article about Sean, but I have a message where I said I confronted Amy DeAngelis and I said, you can't say that you're Free Karen Reed if you're working directly with Kate Peter. I don't care. I don't care what you say. You exposed me over something that was actually not true. It was a misunderstanding, and you took a screenshot out of context that wasn't even meant for you to ever see. Mm-hmm. You don't know the context in which it was. And you took this information and you went to Kate Peter, and you did that because you perceive it's this turtle boy derangement syndrome that we see happening with Sean now, because the same people, this Amy DeAngelis and Kate Peter, these same people are the ones who are putting ideas in his head now, right? These same people are the people that took me out because they perceived that I was a benefit to Aiden Carney, right? So if they got me to shut up and go away, I wasn't going to write any more articles about Lindsay Gaetani. I wasn't going to write any more articles about Kate Peter. They were going to have their pie in the sky perfect scenario where they didn't have me out there nipping at their heels every day, right? That's what they want. They wanted me to shut up. We've discussed this ad nauseum. They didn't get it. But the whole plan was Amy DeAngelis went and took the information that she had and passed it over to the other side. I love hearing the story about how hard Lindsay worked to uncover my identity. Lindsay was handed my identity. She didn't do any work. There was nothing done to uncover it other than the fact that here's this person's identity. And maybe they went to my Facebook page and pulled a few photos. You know what I mean? So there was no intensive work that was done. There was none of this. Um, this was simply someone who thought that they were going to get rid of Turtle Boy because in their head, Turtle Boy is the devil. And they did this. And we see this over and over and over and over and over again,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But back to what I was saying about Aiden earlier is we have this situation where you have to look and you have to really look. You look at all the things that they accuse him of. He did this and he did that and he did this. Less than half of them he actually did, because you have this active group. They literally call themselves a troll mafia. When you call them out on it, they're like, "Oh, it's just a name." But what actually happens is they literally operate as a mafia. And so you have this situation where these people lie, they make things up. This isn't these attempts, getting him arrested for witness intimidation in December was not their first attempt to get him arrested. They've tried over and over and over again. They try to frame him for crimes he didn't commit. They literally try to honey trap him and set him up with women. Like they would try to have women go and most of the time they failed, because a lot of the times the women that they sent actually would then turn out to like him, so that they weren't able to accomplish that. So you have this whole scenario where there's insane level of interference in this person's life. And I almost am to the point now where when Aiden says something that I don't like, or he does something that I don't like, I actually have to look at things through the lens of how I look at some of the domestic violence victims that I help, or sexual assault victims that I help, if they're acting out in any certain way. And I have to say, how much of that is because this guy has to spend his entire life questioning everybody's motives around him? I
Mm-hmm.
think that again, I don't know if he's here or pop. I know that I do the same thing. I pop in and out of places, but I think if you asked him, I always say that Aiden Carney has never asked me for anything. I've also never asked him for anything. And that's very intentional on my part. I don't ask him to retweet me. I don't ask him to have me on a show. I don't ask him to do any of these things, because I want him to know that I come to him from an authentic place, so that if we're having a conversation, he doesn't have to sit there and say, "Oh, is this person trying to get something from me? Are they trying to get information from me that they can use against me? Are they trying to do this?" Like, I
Yeah.
don't think people appreciate the amount of mental stress that he's under from
Mm-hmm.
these things that happen. And you know what? He talks about it. If you listen and you go back over time, he talks about having mental health struggles at different times because the pressure gets to be too much, or stress, or this is happening. And and how would you feel when someone's trying to send you to jail? In December, they succeeded. And now every day, every single little troll that gets out here, I saw someone asking in the comments, are there really indictments dropping in January? That's the latest one, right? There's indictments dropping in January. So we have to walk around every day and wonder, are these corrupt cops advertising that we have indictments coming in January? This guy spends his entire life looking over his shoulder every day. They make fun of him. They say, "Oh, the Chevy Silverados." He has to look over his shoulder every day to make sure that there's not somebody there to arrest him. And if you don't think that has an effect on somebody's behavior, and that has an effect on how they approach the world and how they do things, I have to say it's a miracle when you get Aiden and you got that genuine Aiden because he's laughing along while he's telling the jokes, and you see him having a good time and rolling through that. That makes me happy, because I say, "Oh, this guy is in a safe space and he was able to relax for a few minutes to come out here and do this." And
Right. I only have a 16K audience, and it gets to me. People are like, "Why do you worry about what 250 people just said?" And it's like, because it's 250 people and you get smashed all at once. If it
it's
was just
true.
one person here and there, you don't notice it. But when it's 250 people all at once, it's getting smashed. And the other thing I would note is that he's got a much larger audience. So whatever it is that I'm discovering that's difficult to manage for me mentally, You can multiply that by 10 at least. So,
And he probably has a larger percentage of detractors than you do, because some of them are literally, it's almost like the
driven
paid
by
protest.
hatred.
It's almost like the paid protesters that you see. They're actually people that are basically just recruited from all corners of the internet and Discord, and they're told these stories about this horrible boogeyman, this awful person who's out there and ruining society because he said some mean words on the internet. And they actively recruit people to come in and do this, to constantly be here and constantly be involved. To them, they're able to really quickly dehumanize him. And when they sell that dehumanized version of him, then everybody feels justified to do the things that they're doing. It doesn't matter that they're trying to
That's
put
right.
him in. It doesn't matter they're trying to help the government put him in jail in a corrupt way because, well, he deserves it. Right. And so when you have these people that become the judge, the jury, and the executioner because they've convinced themselves, we see it in politics. I'm not going to get into politics, but we see it there. Um, it's a problem. It's a real problem in our society. And people get mad at me when I make this comparison, but it is exactly like Adolf Hitler. That's exactly how Adolf Hitler did it in the Holocaust. And it is a situation where people are taught that this person's not human, they're less than, they're a devil, they're this and they're that. And it leads to predictably terrible results every single time.
Yeah. Well, there's things I don't agree with about tabloid style journalists, which is kind of the category I guess my audience is familiar with me putting Aiden in, but the tabloid journalists are generally legal. They, as you say, they have to dehumanize him and detach him from any kind of journalism, and make out that he's like this snapping turtle that they hung on his mother's front porch the week that she died. uh, that's what they have to do. It's the same sort of thing with the Julian Assange case, because everybody wanted to say, well, he's not a journalist. He can't be a valid journalist because he's an activist. And then what happened while they had him locked up? All the journalists turned into activists. You know what I mean? Like
It's true.
it was,
Yeah.
it was nuts. So, but that's what they
No,
do. They do the
listen,
dehumanization, as you say, to pull him away from being that label that he's trying to earn, basically.
I think there's no question that Julian Assange was treated horribly. His rights were violated repeatedly, and I wasn't necessarily a fan of Julian Assange, right? But I'm able to look at a situation like that and say I don't like everything he did. Like as a person, he wasn't that great. But in on the flip side of that, same thing. It's a great way you can look at him the same way you look at Turtle Boy, in the sense that you don't have to like him. You don't
That's
have to
right.
agree with all of his decisions. There are some people that are so offended because they say, well, Turtle Boy was married and he had a girlfriend. He's still married, actually. He's still legally married and he has a girlfriend. And these people see these things and they can't get past that, because that is, everyone has the right to their own beliefs and their own moral compass and whatever else. But at the end of the day, you don't have to like him. He doesn't, as a matter of fact, he's not even asking you to like him. He's just putting out his work and you're there to consume it or not. And you can express your opinion around it and you can do all of these things. But
Mhm.
I try not to judge people. I try to judge people's behavior or their actions. And if people want to judge Aiden Carney for that, it's okay. They have the right to do it. I'm totally okay with it. But at the end of the day, then look at the other things he does. I'm going to back up 1 second because you were talking about him being a journalist, and when they try to say he's not a journalist, I told him um, a long time ago, because they always try to find that thing. This is what the trolls do, right? When I was on your show, I set them up really good. If you remember, we set them up where I said, oh, you make fun of my list, but I've had my list my entire life since I started talking. Like, it doesn't bother me. You're not going to get me with that, right?
Yeah.
I'm 52 years old in 6 days, everybody. You still have time to get me a present or a card. 52 years old in 6 days, right? So I don't care about that. You're not going to, oh, I'm bald. I don't care. I just don't care. You're never going to get me on anything like that. And I said on your show, the way that the trolls are going to get me is by saying I'm ineffective. And the next day, it was the best thing, because Kate Peter said I was ineffective. There was like 40 trolls that posted how I was ineffective. I
I
didn't
troll
tell
them
them.
good.
I didn't tell them that I don't care if they say I'm ineffective. It's only people that I respect or care about when they start to. And you know what? I'm not ineffective. I'm literally on 36 hours of sleep. I cranked out a bunch of content today. I'm going to finish one. I'm 36 hours without sleep. I'm going to have one more article that comes out tonight. I'm being pretty effective this week, so they're not going to get me on that either. But at the end of the day,
What's your impression rate right now on X? Do you see it every
uh,
now and again?
I don't look that often. I'll look right now though because you asked me, so I
It
don't
only
look that
it only
often.
shows up occasionally unless you're actually paying for X, which I presume you are because you can write bigger
I
text
am, yeah.
than what
I
you
am
do.
monetized on X. That's the other thing. So if people want to call me a grifter, go ahead. I actually just did double check what my monetization was at, and let me
Look,
tell you right now,
we live in
people are going to
capitalist
be.
societies. You know, it's actually the people who are trying to stop you from earning money that are the ones that are going against the law. Earning money is not against the law. Trying to stop someone from earning money, that's against the law.
So on my tweets, I'm approaching about 25 million impressions, and the last week I'm over a million. Um, and that's where we're at. I only exist on X. I obviously don't have a YouTube channel, despite saying that I'm going to get there. But I have. It really has been interesting for me that I'm able to have built the audience that I do. I only recently, obviously, you were my first podcast, Aussie, and I only recently started coming on podcasts and doing things like this. So I really am kind of excited, and this independent journalism thing is something that I want to do. Hippie Chick, I don't have a YouTube channel yet, but I will. Um,
You're doing
here,
such a
but
great job. Like your writing, it's easy to understand, it's easy to follow. Like, you know, you can get, I don't know, I imagine like reading Lally's writings in Lally's voice is something that just puts you to sleep after the first paragraph, you know what I mean? But you're actually a good writer and it keeps you riveted to the end. So I don't
th-
find that with Sean's writings or Lally's. There's a number of writers that I'm thinking don't even scratch the surface as far as ability to write and hold your attention as you do.
thank you, I do appreciate that. And the one thing that I was trying to say in terms of the advice that I gave to Turtle Boy, I did say to him, when they were trying to come at him, just like they tried to do with me by saying I was ineffective or whatever else, I also, they kept saying to him, they kept calling him a blogger, like it was an insult. And I said, you know what? I said, be a blogger. What makes a blogger not a journalist? Because they're trying to say, oh, you're not a journalist, you're a blogger. And I'm like, you know what? Like, look around. Blogging has taken over the world. Bloggers, podcasters, everything else. You know, I- I'd rather do what I do, although my pocketbook doesn't reflect it, but I'd rather do what I do than write for any one of these mainstream media organizations that currently puts out garbage every single day and is dying on the vine, where I get better engagement than some of these papers do in terms of just my tweets. So I'm not. They may get paid more than me, but I didn't get into this for the money. I may try and make a go of it and see what I can do there. But for me, the ability to express myself, the ability to talk about topics that I like, the ability to do this activism like this, that's one thing that I'll always appreciate Turtle Boy for, is he kind of, and let's face it, he found it more with this case than with anything else, but he kind of found this uh, activism journalism combination. And when I started doing this, the day that I changed my thing to independent journalist in my bio, I went to the Society of Professional Journalists and I was reading through their code of ethics and I was doing things like this.
Yeah,
And people act like this is kind of a new, like this is a new thing, this journalism activism. But if you look through their code of ethics, it talks about how you should use your journalism in order to speak truth to power, and you should use your journalism in order to help the afflicted or do things. And those are the same principles of activism, and they're incorporated
correct.
right into these journalistic codes of ethics. So I don't think there's any daylight between the two. I don't think there's a conflict between being an activist and being a journalist, because the bottom line is I choose what I write about. I'm not a news presenter. I'm not an editor of the local paper where I'm doing this. I'm not. Uh, on TV news where I have to make sure we're going right down the middle. I'm an opinion journalist. I have an opinion, and I'm going to tell you what my opinion is.
Yeah.
And so that it fits so squarely with being an activist. There is,
And that's what Aiden is as well, an opinion journalist. So
yeah,
there was a period like, see, not sure if you're familiar with John Pilger, but he's an Australian journalist, and he was the one that actually led like the world journalists towards the activism sort of side of things. He opened up the can of worms, like, we're just repeating what the government tells us to repeat. We're just being invited in to see the government side of things to produce what the government wants us to repeat. So I feel like he was like back during the Vietnam War, he was like one of the first voices that came out and said, we need to be activists. We need to be the ones that we need to go back to holding the government's feet to the fire. We need to go back to this original journalism because the government's just bought us all out and got us all eaten out of their pockets. So I feel like he
you,
was sorry.
no, you don't even know how much you're speaking to me at the moment, because this literally, when I did go speak at the Norfolk County District Attorney's Office, it was kind of one of the cornerstones of the speech that I gave, in that I said, we have these. I talked about how we're kind of in this amazing time. I'm going to paraphrase, but we're in this amazing time because you have this event. We have these multiple groups of people coming together, right? So we're here, and we have, Free Karen Reed and Justice for John O'Keefe, and we have, Enrique Delgado Garcia's family came, which was amazing. Despite they came to show their support, despite the fact that they're currently have legal representation and they couldn't get on the front lines and march back and forth, but they wanted us to know that they were there, and they appreciated the fact that we were supporting their cause. And the Sandra Birchmore people were there, and Jen Root, who Jen Root, she's my sister, and she's exactly like my real sister, in the sense that I know my sister would fight for me, like she fights for her brother Justin Root. And these amazing people, with some new people, a new family that we met, Nathaniel Brown. We have all of these people out there. I talked a little bit about Molly Bish in Worcester County and her family.
Mm-hmm.
We have all of these people that are coming together now in a way that could never have happened before. And this is kind of the beauty of what social media and independent journalism has brought us. So we're able to actually take this activism and journalism and put it together. And we had 100 people out there in front of the district attorney's office, and we called on him to resign, and we did all of these things that you would normally see in some big city protest that was put on by a national rights organization or whatever else. We were able to bring a crowd, and we were
Yeah.
able to get there and have our message heard and come together in a way that was organically beautiful. It was people that were there to support each other. And every time one of those family members got up and spoke about their loved one or about what they went through and the things that they've done, I find myself standing there one step away from openly weeping. You know what I mean? And it's just such a beautiful moment for them to see that, hey, the world supports you. And guess what? Here's Channel 10 News, and now they're interviewing us, and now they're doing these things. People can make a difference in a way that they could never do a decade ago or 2 decades ago on an individual basis. So sure, people could join a group and they could do this, but now we have this thing where people are really coming together, and we're standing up to some of these things, that these entrenched power structures that I talked about, like with the district attorney's office, where they have over and over and over again just maintain this level of corruption. And we're at a point in our world now where we can stand up and say no more. We don't need to have a revolution in terms of taking over the government or doing any of these things. We
Mm-hmm.
have our own revolution with our voices and with our ability to come together on issues like this. And to me, we're living in probably the most amazing time in history because of it.
Organic protests have less pests. They also have less leadership to cut the head of the snake off. That's all Julian Assange was, cut the head off the snake. That's all that was about. And
It
that's
is true. And on this protest, I can tell you, it was really interesting, because we were at this thing, and nobody really had a role. Like when we got there, there was kind of this, they had a plan, and I think Deanna was going to introduce some of the speakers, and thank you, Scott. I appreciate that. And we had this thing happen where Deanna had to go, and I took the thing and I started introducing speakers, and everybody just kind of fell into it like they were doing something. You know what I mean? So everyone had a place. Esty was going to lead the march around the building, and this all came together live and on the scene, and it was just a bunch of people who were really out there trying to come together as a community, and that's something that we did here first online and on YouTube, on channels like this, and on Twitter, and on this social media. And suddenly these things are becoming bigger and bigger and bigger because we're able to translate that into people actually wanting to drive and come out. You know, one of the points that I made in my
and understand it. You're right.
And one of the points,
sorry,
I wish you could come from Australia and drive, but you're on an island. You have to first take the ferry, and then you have to get on a plane. But we're one of the things in my speech is I said, "Where's Michael Morrissey? You know, he's in this building, and we have literally standing on the sidewalk. We have the loved ones of murder victims. We have people out here who are just on Root's parents were there, his sister. We have people out here who are his constituents, and they're literally the families of murder victims. And he can't come outside and spare a word for them. He can't invite them in, even get away from the cameras and invite them in and have a quick conversation with them. I can drive from Bristol, Connecticut to Canton, Massachusetts, and stand on a sidewalk and give a speech under threat, constant threat that I'm going to be arrested for witness intimidation.
Yeah.
And that dude can't waddle down the hallway, get in the elevator, because I doubt he takes the stairs, and walk out there and say a word to anybody, you know?
Yeah. So this all ties into a comment you said yesterday about if Morrissey gets TB in jail, that's it. That's the end of it for him publicly. Everyone's going to break out. There's going to be tens of thousands of more people on the street than he had before.
I think I was referring to Karen Reed in that thing, but I do agree with you.
Karen, yes. But sorry.
I agree with you. It's the same problem, right? They have created, they've backed themselves into a corner, right? They've created this problem. They were desperate to get him to shut up. They tried arresting him. It didn't work. That was their time to make that work, and that time is over. Because the movement has grown so far beyond Aidan Carney just going there and having to lead every protest directly. You know, when I went on last Wednesday, Aidan had to pick up his kids, so he wasn't there. But there were still 100 of us out there doing what we do. So he started this kind of great thing in this case where he's now inspired people to take what he did and continue. And on a day that he can't be there, we're still there. So it really is an interesting thing. I've been to 2 events so far, and I plan to go to a lot more because it's really warms my heart to see the community that's developed. The other side, they'll call us, you know, trailer trash or trailer park people or whatever they're going to do. But honestly, it's such a big, wide, diverse group of people that
it's beautiful. It's beautiful to see. And I know
beautiful.
That a lot of people have a very positive attitude towards you joining them, the boots on the ground. I know Scott and Richie and a lot of people have come in here just tonight and said that they appreciate that you came and you made your speech, and you're very welcomed because of your attitude. So
well, great. I'm fond of all of them too, and you know, especially the Scotts and the Richies and the people who've been out there, and they're out there doing what they do, and they show up, so many more times than I can. I wanted to be in West Roxbury this morning. I couldn't do it. I couldn't make the drive. I have too many things going on today. But it's gotten to the point to now when there's events, I start to have fear of missing out. Like I want to go to this event and I can't make it there. And I really like it. I start to look at my schedule and say, can I move things around? How can I do this? Because I want to get out there, because every time it really is just such an amazing community, and it's an honor to be a part of it. It really is.
Well, they're honored to have you. From what I'm hearing, it's been wonderful to see that the boots on the ground have actually multiplied and not dwindled with all of these shenanigans. I know that these people have been tasked with breaking up the boots on the ground and stopping the protests, and they're failing miserably. Since the Enrique situation happened, there's now double the boots on the ground than there ever was before. And now we've also got Mizzy and her crew have also joined up with the forces. For Sandra Birchmore, we've also got. I'm gonna forget some, so help me out here. We've got
Just en route. Just
just
en
on
route.
just on Root's family. They were having a struggle getting word out about his case. So yeah, I'm seeing this growing swell on the ground, which is more what Morrissey is worried about than anything else. I don't think he cares what happens internationally. I don't think he cares what any of us have to say overseas in other countries, that the whole world is watching him do this. He doesn't care about any of that. I think what he does actually care about, though, he hasn't come out and said it. He's not showing it. He's being quite belligerent against it. But I think he is worried about the swelling um, of the boots on the ground, the people who are genuinely interested in justice. So
You know, one of the things that I really like the most about this, and I highlighted it in my speech, and it kind of I finished my speech when I got there. Like it literally I was dictating it into my phone in the car. Like I had just enough time. I had a work emergency and I had just enough time to drive there, and I was trying to talk into my notes app on the phone and figure out what I wanted to say. And I really finished it on the ground in my car there. And one of the things that really struck me, I talk about the diversity of the community at these events, but specifically at this event, the diversity between the different types of cases, because we have these cases. There's a They couldn't be more different. Enrique's family was there. They didn't even speak English. They speak Spanish as their, and thank God we have our wonderful friend Beatriz who was there, who was able to act
translate.
as a translator and communicate with those people on our behalf. I wanted to make sure that they were getting the message from us, that we were so sorry for their loss and that we were there to support them. And we had people you know, of every gender and every sexuality and every race, and we had all this big in every socioeconomic background, so we had this big diverse crowd there. And it didn't just apply to our demographics, because the cases are so diverse. We have Just en route, who was shot by the police. Some people say that his initial shooting outside, I think, Boston Medical Center, one of the hospitals, I don't quote me. Um, some people think that shooting was justified because he had a clear paintball marker, and there's a question as to whether he. I think that with proper training, that shooting could have been avoided. Um,
For
in
sure.
terms of the mental health training that these officers either should have had or should have relied on, but even more importantly, he ran from that scene, got in a car, he had a slow speed chase, drove away. The the same officer who shot him tried to do a pit maneuver. The pit maneuver failed and ended up by scaring Justin, who was literally in the middle of a mental health crisis,
Hmm.
and now has been not only shot at, he was struck, so he was hit by a bullet, and now he thinks they're trying to kill him, so he's running for his life. And the slow speed chase after the pit maneuver turned into a high speed chase. The car, when they got to this location where I don't know if you remember if they used stop sticks or there was a second pit attempt, but whatever the car stopped, he got out of the car. He was on the ground. There was a retired or former EMT there that was kneeling down and helping him. And the police got out of the car and they asked him, they made the EMT move, and they opened fire and shot him 31 times.
Yeah.
And when I talked to Jen Root, I asked her a lot of questions because I have some information on that case that I'm working my way through in terms of the body cam videos and things like that. Some of it's public and some of it's not, and I'm working my way through that. And I did ask her a question. I said, you know, we know that the paintball marker, he didn't have that anymore. So did he have a did he have a firearm? Because that's what I have some friends who are police officers who always tell me, no, that was a good shoot. It was a good shoot. And so I asked, and she said, well, there was this BB gun, and the BB gun had a thing coming out of it, and the BB gun was found in the bushes. He was shot in both hands at the initial shooting at the hospital. He was shot in both hands in the initial, I think it was 6 rounds that were fired at him. And so when you have him at the scene, they find this BB gun, and the BB gun is in the bushes, and there was no blood on it. There was no blood on it. He definitely wasn't holding the BB gun in his hands, and that BB gun had no blood on it. Yet both of his hands were shot through. So you end up in a situation where you have police who didn't the EMT that was there didn't sense a threat. They didn't see Justin Root with a firearm. They were literally trying to triage and take care of a patient that was on the ground. They were forced to move. The police opened fire, and who knows when that BB gun ended up in the bushes. Was it at the beginning of it? Was it after it? And then you have a police officer who throws his body camera in the car. He's making statements. I killed the mother effer. It was a nightmare. And that investigation took 30 days. And I estimate that it took 30 seconds. I'm not going to go into that detail about all these cases, but we have that case. We have Sandra Birchmore, which was a case, obviously, where a police officer groomed a young girl and eventually ended up by impregnating and killing her. We have the
multiple police officers groomed her.
Yes, you're correct. Yep, sorry. And then we have this
that are involved with the Karen Read case.
We have this Enrique case where you have what they try to sell as a tragic accident when he was beaten to death. You have the John O'Keefe case, which is a double whammy because you have John O'Keefe, who someone caused his death. Someone caused the murder of John Reed, an innocent woman who is being charged. So you have this diversity of cases. That's my whole point, is you have this big diversity of cases, and these people really have no reason in general to show up at a rally together. Their cases are also different. 2 of the victims are police officers. One of them was a police explorer who gravitated toward police. But the common thread in each one of these cases and everything that you see here is that every one of those cases involves a potential legal liability for a law enforcement officer. And when that happens...
Mostly the same officers.
Mostly the same officers. Well, or the same officers investigating the whatever, maybe the initial officers, right? So the Mass State Police Detective Squad of the Norfolk County District Attorney's Office, with the exception of Enrique, which is in Worcester County.
The old boys club.
The same cops investigated all of these cases. And that's the thread that ties it together. The one thread is that in each one of these cases, as opposed to the other cases we see out there is a police officer facing some kind, or at least an allegation of legal liability. Brian Albert, their family has been at least credibly accused of being involved in this, right? And Kevin Albert has been accused of potentially intimidating witnesses, and the police officers that shot Justin Root's pretty self-explanatory. The Sandra Birchmore case, we have multiple police officers that groomed her. It didn't matter about the diversity of the victims. What the thread that runs through them is this one thing that causes all of these cases to stand out and scream this unity that's different than every other case involving these same officers when they investigate a case that involves a civilian.
Unopposed DA's office for 2 decades?
There you go.